The man who built a universe of gods and monsters started out writing obituaries. He was fired from a pants factory. He almost quit before his biggest success.
Today, we have this stack of fascinating source material covering the real, deeply human story of Stan Lee. Our mission is simple. We want to extract the surprising life lessons from the man who completely redefined modern mythology.
Right, because this story is incredibly relatable.
It really is. It is for anyone trying to find their path in life.
What's fascinating here is that his real superpower was empathy.
Not flying.
No, not flying. He was not shooting lasers. He was a master synthesizer of the human experience.
Right.
When you look closely at his life, you realize he didn't just write comic books. He wrote about our collective fears, our daily struggles, and our hopes. He just wrapped them all up in brightly colored spandex.
And to really understand the heights he reached, we have to look at where he started. Born Stanley Martin Lieber in 1922 in New York.
2 Romanian Jewish immigrants.
Exactly. His parents, Celia and Jack. As a kid, he was devouring books.
Sherlock Holmes, King Arthur, Tarzan, The Odyssey. But then the Great Depression hit.
And that changed everything.
His father, Jack, was a tailor, and he lost his job. Our source material points out that watching his father struggle deeply impacted a young Stan.
It completely shaped his worldview, you know.
How so?
Well, that financial anxiety became foundational. It drove him into the workforce at a very young age. He wasn't chasing fame initially.
He was chasing security.
Pure security. He learned very early on that the ultimate privilege in life is having stable employment. In his mind, the best thing that could ever happen to a person was simply having a steady paycheck.
So his first real job was as an assistant in the office of the second largest pants manufacturing company in the United States.
Which sounds impressive, but
That didn't exactly pan out, did it?
not at all. He was so new, the salesman didn't even bother to learn his name. And then, just a week before Christmas, he was fired.
Talk about a rough start. Picture this. He is walking the streets of New York with a briefcase, just hoping people would look at him and think, there goes a real writer.
He had this massive dream of being a famous, talented author.
But reality hit hard again. Instead of writing the great American novel, he found himself writing obituaries for a local paper.
Right.
Writing about people who had died or were about to die.
He was incredibly grim. It certainly wasn't the creative outlet he was searching for. So he started looking for other projects in newspapers and local theaters.
Until the nepotism kicked in.
Exactly. Ultimately, his introduction to the comic book industry came down to a classic case of nepotism. His cousin-in-law, Martin Goodman, got him a job at Timely Records.
This was an entertainment company where Goodman worked as an editor.
Right.
So he gets his foot in the door. But he didn't walk in as a hotshot writer.
No, he started as a literal errand boy.
For Joe Simon and Jack Kirby, these are the legendary creators of Captain America. And Stan is fetching their ink.
He is grabbing their coffee.
He is not part of the creative process at all.
Right. But he had an insane work ethic, fueled by that childhood financial anxiety.
Which makes sense.
Yeah. Eventually, he worked his way up to actually writing the stories.
Yeah.
But here's the brilliant irony of it all. He was deeply embarrassed by the work.
Because he still dreamed of writing serious literature. He wanted to be the next Arthur Conan Doyle.
Right.
Okay, let's unpack this, because this leads to one of the most famous names in pop culture history. He decides to save his real name, Stanley Lieber, for his future masterpiece.
So he chops his first name in half.
And uses the pseudonym Stan Lee. He didn't want his real identity attached to what he thought were childish comic books.
The fake name he created to hide his embarrassment became one of the most famous names in the history of global entertainment. It's an amazing twist of fate.
It really is.
By 1941, Simon and Kirby left the company suddenly over a financial dispute. Stan, being basically the only guy left who knew how the system worked, was made the head editor.
He was just a teenager.
A teenager running the show. He even created his first superhero, the Destroyer, fighting Nazis right as World War II was raging.
But before he could expand on it, he volunteered for the Army in 1942.
And that time in the military is actually a crucial turning point.
You might assume he was sent off to the front lines, but the Army saw he was a writer. So they sent him to Queens to make training manuals, posters, and instructional films. How did this experience shift his perspective on comics?
It was a massive light bulb moment for him.
Oh, because of the comic strips.
Exactly. The military started using comic strips in the training materials to help soldiers learn faster. And it worked beautifully. It proved to Stan the immense educational and communicative power of the comic medium.
It wasn't just disposable entertainment.
No, he realized it was a highly effective way to transmit complex information to adults. It validated the medium for him.
So he comes back from the war in 1945. He returns to timely comics, but the landscape has completely changed.
Completely changed. After the real-world horrors of World War II, the public was exhausted.
They didn't want to read about brightly colored superheroes punching two-dimensional villains.
Right. Sales plummeted. The industry pivoted hard into whatever would sell. Romance, westerns, horror, police procedurals.
And it wasn't just low sales. Comics became public enemy #1. They were viewed as a gateway to juvenile delinquency and perversion,
There was this massive moral panic.
which led to the creation of the Comics Code Authority. That was a strict censorship board that heavily restricted what writers could do.
So Stan is sitting there, his creative hands are tied, writing stories he doesn't care about, just to collect a paycheck.
And you have to imagine the psychological toll that takes on a creative person.
Oh, absolutely. You are heavily censored, writing fluff in an industry that society actively looks down upon. And this professional stagnation was compounded by a devastating personal tragedy.
Right. He had married his wife, Joan, after the war.
And they had a daughter, JC.
But in 1953, Joan gave birth to their second daughter, Jan. Tragically, Jan died just hours after birth.
It's just heartbreaking.
And going through something like that completely destabilizes your life. It profoundly shifts your perspective on everything, including how you spend your time.
Exactly. When you suffer a loss of that magnitude, your tolerance for spending your life doing things that lack meaning vanishes. Stan was experiencing severe burnout.
He looked around and saw other people building bridges, making medical advancements, saving lives.
He felt he was wasting his fleeting time on Earth writing silly, censored stories for children. By the late 1950s, he was entirely ready to quit the industry forever.
But then his wife Joan gave him a piece of advice that literally changed pop culture history.
She told him, if you're going to quit anyway, you have nothing to lose.
Why not just write exactly the kind of stories that you would actually want to read?
And that is a profound lesson for you listening. Rock bottom often provides the ultimate freedom to innovate. When you are no longer afraid of losing your job because you are already willing to walk away, you stop playing by the artificial rules that have been holding you back.
That freedom coincided with the company, which was now on the verge of closing its doors in 1958, deciding to fire one last desperate shot to save themselves.
They asked Stan and a returning Jack Kirby to create a team of superheroes to compete with DC's Justice League.
So because he had zero cares left to give, Stan threw out the traditional rulebook. We know the result is the Fantastic Four in 1961. But what was the actual shift in the creative formula? Why did it resonate so deeply?
Well, he changed three fundamental things. First, the heroes were deeply flawed. They bickered.
They argued.
They made terrible mistakes.
Right.
Reed Richards was a genius, but he talked too much and alienated his friends. The Thing was angry and depressed about his monstrous appearance.
And the second thing,
The villains weren't just two-dimensional evil monsters. They had tragic, sympathetic backstories driven by circumstances.
right.
And third, the setting. They weren't in a fake place like Metropolis or Gotham City. They were in a real place, New York City.
Grounding the fantastical in reality. You could look out your window in New York and imagine these characters swinging by.
Yeah, and they carried this momentum forward with incredible psychological depth.
Look at the Hulk. Stan wanted to play with the concepts of Jekyll and Hyde and Frankenstein.
Yes, he wanted to explore the idea that a monster isn't necessarily evil. The Hulk is just a good man who is entirely out of control of his own anger. It was complex psychological storytelling disguised as a monster comic.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. His most iconic creation almost didn't happen.
Spider-Man.
Yes. Stan wanted to create a teenage superhero based on a pulp magazine he read as a kid called The Spider. But when he pitched Spider-Man to his boss, Martin Goodman, it was a complete disaster.
Goodman told him teenagers are sidekicks, not heroes.
Plus, people hate spiders.
It went against every established convention of the industry at the time. A hero was supposed to be an adult, wealthy, or an alien god.
But Stan believed in the core concept, a teenager dealing with the real, unglamorous problems of youth.
So what does Stan do? Since the boss said no, he sneaks the pitch into the final issue of a comic series that was about to be canceled anyway.
Amazing fantasy.
Right. And the choice of artist here is crucial. He originally went to Jack Kirby.
But Kirby's art style is too heroic and muscular. His characters look like Greek gods. That wasn't Peter Parker.
So Stan partnered with artist Steve Ditko instead. Ditko gave Peter Parker a skinny, realistic, awkward look, and the character exploded off the newsstands.
Because he was relatable. He had super strength, sure, but he still had to obey a curfew. He was dealing with homework, trying to make rent, and the terrifying transition into adulthood. He was instantly the most human character in comics.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, Stan realized that he wasn't just writing entertainment anymore. He realized these comics could carry serious moral weight.
And he respected his young readers immensely. In fact, he famously instructed his writers to use college-level vocabulary.
He trusted that kids were smart enough to figure out big words through context clues. He believed there was no topic too mature for kids as long as you found the right way to explain it to them.
Looking back at the 1960s, it's fascinating to see how the creators used these characters as mirrors for the turbulence of society at that time. Now, we want to be very clear here. We are neutrally reporting on the social and political commentary found in the source material.
Right, we are not taking any sides or endorsing these viewpoints. We're just explaining what Stan and his team were trying to convey.
Exactly. So objectively looking at it, how did they process those cultural anxieties?
Take the creation of Iron Man. During the height of the Vietnam War, Stan intentionally created Tony Stark as a wealthy weapons manufacturer, selling arms to the U.S. military.
He wanted to force his readers to grapple with a character who represented the military-industrial complex.
It was an exploration of the gray morality of war and capitalism. The hero was doing things that were in many ways indefensible, and the readers had to wrestle with that complexity.
Then you have the X-Men. They were dealing with massive societal shifts, and the X-Men were created as a direct allegory for anyone who felt marginalized, oppressed, or considered different by mainstream society.
Yes. Stan used the concept of genetic mutation as a tool to teach tolerance. The mutants were hated and feared simply for being born different. The comic aimed to humanize them and show the destructive nature of bigotry.
Which was incredibly resonant during the civil rights movement.
And we also see this very clearly in the creation of Black Panther. Stan and Jack Kirby purposefully set out to create an African superhero during the heart of the American civil rights era.
They recognized that a massive portion of the population was not seeing themselves represented positively in entertainment.
So they created a king from an advanced African nation who possessed an intellect that rivaled the smartest characters in the Marvel universe.
And physical powers equal to Captain America. It was a deliberate, powerful message of capability and positive representation.
The fans responded to this deeper level of storytelling in droves. They were sending so much fan mail that Stan had to hire a secretary, Flo Steinberg, just to handle it.
And because he couldn't reply to everyone individually, he created Stan's Soapbox. It was a section at the back of the comics where he spoke directly to the readers. He gave advice, he talked about social issues, and he always signed off with his famous catchphrase.
Excelsior.
Exact.
That soapbox was a brilliant marketing move, even if it was born out of necessity. It made the readers feel like they were part of an exclusive club.
And more importantly for the business, it made Stan Lee the undeniable singular face of Marvel Comics. When people thought of Marvel, they thought of his smiling face and his direct, friendly voice.
But being the face of the company wasn't always smooth sailing. The reality of business often collides heavily with art.
Our sources detail a major controversy in the 1980s involving Jack Kirby. Kirby had left Marvel and was trying to get his original artwork back.
And again, remaining entirely neutral here, we are just looking at the facts of what happened. It was a very tense situation that became highly public.
Marvel demanded that Kirby surrender all his copyright claims in exchange for the physical art he had drawn.
The public was furious, especially because Stan had previously been a vocal advocate for artists owning their work. It felt like a betrayal of the collaborative spirit that built the company.
How did that impact Stan's reputation?
It definitely damaged his carefully curated public image as the friendly uncle of comics. He was caught between his corporate bosses and his former creative partner.
Eventually, in 1987, an agreement was reached, but the scar remained.
Though it is worth noting that when Kirby passed away in 1994, Stan attended the funeral and personally ensured that Kirby's widow, Rosalind, received a pension from Marvel.
It really shows the complicated, sometimes messy reality of building an empire. And speaking of that empire, by 1981, Stan had shifted his focus. He realized the real money wasn't just in print anymore.
He moved out to Los Angeles to conquer Hollywood.
He knew these characters belonged on the big screen.
But this is a classic case of being too early to a market. or premature scaling.
Hmm.
1980s Hollywood just did not understand superheroes.
The technology wasn't there.
And the studio executives didn't respect the source material. The budgets were incredibly low. The scripts were often mediocre.
Right. The most notable project from that era was the Incredible Hulk television show. And if you go back and watch it, it operates much more like a standard police procedural than a comic book adaptation.
They stripped away the fantastical elements because they thought audiences wouldn't buy it. And the struggles didn't stop in the 80s. They continued right into the 1990s.
Marvel was bought by a corporate raider named Ronald Perlman.
And this is the era of massive corporate instability. Perlman gave Stan a lifetime contract.
Which was a smart move to keep the mascot around.
But he also made a series of disastrous financial decisions. Perlman tried to monopolize the distribution of comics by buying a distributor called Heroes World.
He did this right as the comic speculation market was crashing.
The entire industry nearly collapsed, and Marvel was literally forced into bankruptcy. Imagine being Stan Lee, watching the universe you built from scratch being dismantled by corporate mismanagement.
But then came the cinematic turning point, the total salvation of the company. In the year 2000, 20th Century Fox released X-Men,
It had a budget of $75 million.
which was a massive gamble at the time, but it grossed nearly $300 million.
It proved that with modern special effects, you could finally do justice to these stories.
Yeah.
You could show mutants using powers without it looking foolish.
And it also gave us the birth of the Stan Lee movie cameo. He played a hot dog vendor on the beach.
It was this perfect little wink to the fans who had been reading his soapbox for decades.
And then in 2002, we got the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man, which absolutely shattered box office records. We saw Stan pulling a little girl away from falling debris.
Those early movies cemented the modern era of massive CGI blockbusters, and they transformed Stan from a comic book legend into a mainstream pop culture icon.
He kept doing those cameos for years.
Yeah.
Iron Man, The Avengers, Black Panther, you name it.
Despite the physical toll it took on him as he aged, he clearly loved the connection it gave him to the fans.
He continued working, speaking, and spreading his message right up until the end. On November 12, 2018, the man who built this modern mythology passed away at the age of 95.
But shortly before he passed, he gave a speech at UCLA. And the material highlights two core takeaways from that final address that really bring this whole story together for anyone listening.
The first takeaway is about conviction.
If you genuinely believe in an idea, pursue it with everything you have. Do not let fools talk you out of it. If he had listened to his boss when he was told that teenagers can't be heroes, we never would have had Spider-Man.
And the second takeaway is his defining philosophy on what makes a hero. True heroes are not perfect, untouchable gods.
They are completely normal people with deep flaws, anxiety, and everyday problems.
But they simply choose to use whatever gifts they have to do the right thing. So what does this all mean?
It means you don't need to be bitten by a radioactive spider to have an impact.
Stan's true superpower was inspiring others through his storytelling. He taught us that our own unique talents, whether that's being a good parent, a kind friend, or excelling in our daily work, is our superpower.
When we use those talents to make the world a slightly better place, we are living up to the legacy of those comic book heroes.
Beautifully said.
This raises an important question, though. A question that builds on everything we've just discussed about how his creations mirrored their era. If Stan Lee's greatest characters were direct reflections of the anxieties of the 1960s, the Cold War, civil rights, the generational divides, what would a completely new, flawed superhero look like if they were created to reflect the exact anxieties of our society today?
What would be their deep, relatable flaw?
And what would be their power?
Wow. That is a fantastic thought to leave on. Think about that as you go about your day. What is the superhero of today's anxieties?
It's a great question.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep learning, keep questioning, and keep uncovering your own superpower. We will catch you next time.